I, Ellen Watson, truly understood today what it means to say misfortune never comes alone. The weather was beastly, cold enough to freeze one solid. The wind, like a rabid dog, howled and pounced on me, making my slender frame shiver uncontrollably. I felt like a withered leaf, ready to be blown into some unknown corner at any moment. Standing at the hospital entrance, my white dress was whipped about, resembling a rag doll that had been manhandled countless times. My hair was a complete mess, looking like a bird's nest. I reckon if a bird landed on my head right now, it might mistake it for a luxurious, fully furnished villa and decide to stay. As for the dark circles under my eyes, they were heavy enough to hang weights from. My face was as pale as if I'd just escaped from the underworld, all thanks to the mess of troubles at home. My mum was lying in the hospital, in a dreadful state, urgently needing £500,000 for surgery. This sum loomed over me like an oppressive mountain, crushing me beneath it, leaving no room to breathe. And my father, an utterly hopeless gambling addict, did nothing but gamble day in and day out, turning our home into a chaotic, smoke-filled hell. He'd gambled away every penny, leaving our house so poor that even a mouse would have to leave in tears. As I stood there, nose running and tears flowing from the biting wind, cursing this wretched situation, I suddenly heard a voice behind me. Ellen Watson? I turned around to see a man in a suit standing behind me. The suit was clearly expensive, tailored to fit him perfectly, accentuating his tall, straight figure. His face looked as if it had been carefully chiseled, with deep-set eyes like two bottomless, cold pools, a high, straight nose, and lips pressed slightly together, exuding an unapproachable coldness. My heart skipped a beat. Who was this? Before I could speak, he said coolly, "I'm Justin Sheffield. There are some things I'd like to discuss with you." I looked at him, completely bewildered, having no idea what this was about. Justin Sheffield? I don't know you. What do you want with me? He glanced around and then said, "This isn't the place to talk. Let's find somewhere quieter." After a moment's hesitation, I followed him into a coffee shop next to the hospital. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the freezing cold outside. I rubbed my reddened hands and looked at him, waiting for him to speak. He sat across from me, his gaze fixed on me, making me feel uneasy. After a while, he finally spoke. "I know you urgently need £500,000 for your mother's surgery." I was startled. How did he know? I looked at him warily and asked, "How do you know that?" "What do you want?" He calmly said, "I can give you this money." My eyes lit up when I heard this, but quickly dimmed again. There's no such thing as a free lunch, he must have some conditions. I looked at him and asked, "All right, what's the catch?" The corner of his mouth turned up slightly, revealing a half-smile, and he said, "Marry me." I nearly choked on my own saliva, staring at him with wide eyes, thinking he must be joking. "Marry you? Are you running a fever? What kind of joke is this?" But he said with a serious face, "I'm not joking. This is a contract marriage, for 1 year. As long as you agree to marry me, I'll give you the £500,000 immediately." Hearing his words, my heart was a jumble of emotions. This was too absurd. How could anyone make such a request? But then I thought of my mother lying in the hospital bed, and I hesitated. £500,000, this was life-saving money for my mother. I bit my lip and asked, "Why me? Why a contract marriage?" Justin leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his chest, and said, "My grandfather wants me to settle down and get married soon. But I don't want to be tied down by marriage, so I need someone to fake a marriage with. And you just happen to meet my requirements." I was speechless. What was all this about? I felt like a product being selected. But I had no choice, for my mother's sake, I had to endure it. I took a deep breath and said, "So what exactly are your requirements?" Justin Sheffield looked at me, a flicker of barely noticeable satisfaction in his eyes. "It's simple," he said. "For the next year, you'll appear as my wife at various events, playing along with my act. To the outside world, we'll present ourselves as a loving couple. But in private, we won't interfere with each other's lives. After a year, we'll divorce." I thought for a moment, feeling that these terms weren't entirely unacceptable. It was just for a year, after all, and for my mother's sake, I was willing to do it. I looked at him and said, "All right, I agree. But you must give me the money first. I need to get my mother into surgery immediately." Justin nodded, saying, "No problem. We'll go and sort out the paperwork now." And just like that, I found myself signing a contract for a marriage of convenience with Justin. Holding that contract, I felt as if I were in a dream. Everything had happened so quickly, I hadn't even had time to process it all. After leaving the cafe, Justin took me straight to the register office. The whole way there, my heart was pounding. Was this really what I wanted? But then I thought of my mother's condition, and my resolve strengthened. At the register office, it was quite busy, filled with happy couples everywhere. Seeing their joyful smiles, then looking at Justin and myself, one worried sick, the other cold as ice. We seemed like we were from two different worlds. The staff began asking various questions, and I was so nervous that my mind went blank, stumbling over my answers. Date of birth? I was born on May 10th, 1998. I snuck a glance at Justin beside me, only to see him answering questions with a cool expression and focused gaze, not a hint of fluster. His presence was overwhelming, in stark contrast to my fumbling demeanor. We finally managed to fill out the forms, and then came the photo session. I stood in front of the backdrop, my body stiff as a board, my smile more like a grimace. I could feel Justin standing next to me, his powerful aura making me even more nervous. I felt like every nerve in my body was taut, like a fully drawn bowstring ready to snap at any moment. Justin, noticing my rigid posture, frowned slightly. He turned his head, his gaze falling on my face, and said softly, "Relax. This is just a formality, don't worry too much about it." His voice was as deep as a cello, and it did have a somewhat calming effect. He reached out and gently placed his hand on my waist. This startled me greatly, my body suddenly tensed up, and my face turned bright red, like a boiled prawn. I could feel his hand like a branding iron, making me feel completely uncomfortable. "I'll try," I stammered, struggling to adjust my expression. Just then, with a click, the flash went off, capturing this moment of a seemingly married yet utterly unfamiliar couple. After receiving our marriage certificate, I looked at the small red booklet in my hand, feeling dazed. This ordinary-looking booklet seemed like a pair of shackles, binding Justin and me together. Justin put the certificate in his pocket and said to me, "I'll transfer the money to your account as soon as possible. Go home and prepare, you'll move into my house tomorrow." I nodded and said, "Okay." Justin drove me back home. As soon as I entered, I saw the mess left behind by my father's gambling habit. I sighed and started packing my things. Thinking about moving into Justin's house tomorrow, I still felt a bit anxious. I wondered what the coming year would bring. The next day, I dragged my suitcase to Justin's house. It was a luxurious mansion, as grand as a castle. I stood at the entrance, took a deep breath, and pressed the doorbell. A man who looked like a butler opened the door. He looked me up and down, his eyes filled with a hint of disdain, and said, "You must be Miss Watson. Follow me, please." I followed the butler into the mansion. The interior decor was so opulent it left me speechless. Expensive furniture and decorations were everywhere. I felt like a country bumpkin, walking carefully, afraid of breaking anything. The butler led me to a room and said, "This is your room. You'll be staying here from now on. The young master has instructed that you rest for a while. You'll have dinner together this evening." I nodded and said, "All right, thank you." After the butler left, I surveyed the room. It was spacious and cozy. But I couldn't feel any warmth, instead, I felt an inexplicable unease. I sat on the bed, thinking about my mother, wondering how she was doing. In the evening, I went to the dining room. Justin was already seated there. He saw me, nodded, and said, "Have a seat." I sat across from him, keeping my head down, not daring to meet his eyes. The table was laden with a sumptuous feast, but I had no appetite. Justin looked at me and said, "What's wrong? Not to your liking?" I quickly shook my head and said, "No, it's not that. I'm just worried about my mother. Justin was silent for a moment, then said, Don't worry. The money has been transferred to your account. Your mother's surgery has been arranged. It can be done tomorrow. Hearing his words, I felt a wave of gratitude. I looked up at him and said, Thank you. Justin said coolly, No need to thank me. This is part of our agreement. Just then, the doorbell rang suddenly. The butler went to answer it, and soon after, a woman walked in. She was very beautiful, wearing a red dress, like a lovely red rose. When she saw Justin and me, the smile on her face vanished, replaced by hostility in her eyes. Justin, who is she? The woman asked coldly, looking at me. Justin frowned and said, She's my wife, Ellen Watson. Ellen, this is Elsie Hayward, my ex-girlfriend. My heart skipped a beat when I heard this. Ex-girlfriend? What was going on? I looked at Elsie, forcing a smile, and said, Hello. Hazel ignored me. She looked at Justin and said, Justin, how could you get married? Didn't you say you only loved me? Justin's face darkened. Elsie, we've broken up. Stop pestering me. But Elsie wouldn't give up. I don't believe it. You must be lying to me. This woman must have used some tricks to seduce you. I was angry hearing her words. Just as I was about to retort, Justin spoke first, Enough. Elsie, I'll say it again, we're over. Please leave. Elsie looked at Justin, tears welling up in her eyes. She glared at me and said, Fine, Justin Sheffield. You'll regret this. With that, she turned and left. After Elsie left, the atmosphere in the dining room became very awkward. I looked at Justin, not knowing what to say. Justin glanced at me and said, Don't mind what she said. Let's eat. I nodded and started eating. But my mind kept replaying Elsie's words, wondering if she would come back to cause more trouble. This contract marriage had just begun, and we'd already encountered so many problems. I couldn't help but wonder what else the future might hold. As I was lost in thought, my phone suddenly rang. I took it out and saw it was the hospital calling. My heart immediately leapt to my throat as I quickly answered. Hello, is this Miss Ellen Watson? Your mother's condition has suddenly worsened. She needs immediate surgery. Please come to the hospital as soon as possible. The doctor's urgent voice came through the phone. Hearing this, my face turned pale. I looked at Justin, stuttering, My mother's condition has worsened. I need to get to the hospital right away. Justin's expression turned serious when he heard this. He stood up and said, I'll go with you. We rushed to the hospital. The doctor told us that my mother's surgery had to be performed immediately, but there were some additional costs. When I heard this, I felt both anxious and helpless. The money Justin had just given me had already been used to pay for part of the fees. And now we needed extra money. What could we do? Just as I was fretting like an ant on a hot pan, Justin suddenly said, Doctor, money is not an issue. Please arrange the surgery immediately. I looked at Justin, my heart full of gratitude. I hadn't expected him to step up without hesitation to help me in this moment. The surgery went smoothly. When my mother was wheeled out of the operating room, I finally felt the weight lift from my chest. I looked at Justin and said, Thank you, really, thank you so much. Justin looked at me, a hint of tenderness flashing in his eyes, and said, Don't mention it. This is also for our agreement. Although he said it was for the agreement, I knew he was actually a good person. After this incident, my opinion of him had changed somewhat. However, little did I know that this was just the beginning. In the days to come, there would be more challenges and difficulties waiting for us. And the relationship between Justin and me would undergo unexpected changes because of these events. I thought signing that marriage contract with Justin, getting the money for my mom's surgery, would be like winning the lottery and starting a new chapter in life. But reality, like an unreasonable monster, swallowed me into an endless pit of trouble. A hole so deep it could pierce right through the earth. As soon as I moved into Justin's mansion, I felt like a tiny ant lost in a giant maze. The place was ridiculously huge. On my first day, I nearly turned myself into a human spinning top trying to navigate it. I felt like I was trapped in an alternate universe I could never escape. But before I could recover from the dizziness of this dream castle, I ran smack into an icy mountain Justin's butler. This butler, just standing there, was like a statue with built-in freezing effects. His expression seemed carved from millennia-old ice, cold enough to extinguish the sun. As soon as I entered, his eyes pierced me like two gleaming swords of frost, scanning me from head to toe. That gaze could instantly freeze the Sahara Desert. I plastered on a smile and said sweetly, "Hello, Mr. Butler, I'm Ellen Watson. I'll be in your care from now on." He merely let out a soft hum from his nose, the sound so cold it could have come from outer space, freezing the entire universe. He said, "Miss Watson, there are many rules in this mansion. You'd better pay attention. Don't think that just because you've entered this door, you'll get any special treatment. You're nothing but, just do what you're supposed to do." Hearing this, I was furious inside, like a balloon that had been popped. Full of anger but not daring to show it. I silently vowed, just you wait. I, Ellen Watson, am not a pushover. Sooner or later, I'll make you admire me so much you'll worship me like an idol. A few days later, I started working at Justin's company. As soon as I entered, I sensed something was off. The way my colleagues looked at me was like a pack of hungry wolves eyeing a little lamb that had wandered into their midst. Some looks were curious, some disdainful, and some just plain weird, as if they could devour me whole. I had barely sat down, my bottom not even warm in the chair, when a colleague swaggered over like a commanding officer. He slammed a stack of documents on my desk with a thwack so loud it could make the earth tremble. He said, "Ellen, go make copies of these files right away. We need them for the meeting." I nodded quickly, like a frightened quail. "Okay, I'll go right away." Before I could even stand up, another colleague yelled, "Ellen, get me a coffee, no sugar." His voice was so loud, you could probably hear it clearly on the moon. Although I was reluctant, I thought it best not to make waves on my first day. So, I forced a smile that looked more like a grimace and agreed. That morning, I felt like a wound-up robot, frantically running around the office. Photocopying documents, making coffee, delivering files. I must have gone up and down the stairs countless times. My legs felt like they weren't my own anymore. I could have probably set a new marathon world record. I was panting and exhausted, like a soldier who had just completed a grueling march, but my colleagues wouldn't let up. There was always something to do here or there. As if I was their personal unpaid laborer, squeezing every last ounce of energy from me. Finally, in the afternoon, I was able to sit down and focus on my own work. However, when I opened my computer, I found that the project files I was responsible for were in complete disarray. Like a ball of yarn that had been clawed by a cat. Much of the important data had vanished into thin air, as if abducted by aliens. I was frantic, pacing around the office like a headless chicken. What was I going to do? I rushed to find the colleague who had previously worked on this project with me and asked him what had happened. He feigned innocence, saying, "I don't know either. Maybe there was a system error. You should look for it yourself." His expression was more convincing than an Oscar-winning performance. Left with no choice, I had to reorganize the data, working overtime late into the night. For those few days, I was like a tireless night owl, my eyes as red as lanterns, my hair falling out like autumn leaves. I finally managed to make some progress on the project. Little did I know, an even bigger problem was about to crash down on me like a ton of bricks. The project proposal I had meticulously prepared, the fruit of several sleepless nights, countless lost hairs. And who knows how many dead brain cells, was my pride and joy. I was full of confidence in this proposal, believing it to be a brilliant diamond that would surely shine in the company, making all those who had underestimated me drop their jaws in astonishment. Excited, I took the proposal to my boss. As soon as I entered his office, he glowered at me like a volcano about to erupt. "Ellen, what's the meaning of this proposal?" Clive just handed me an identical one, claiming it was his hard work. "How do you happen to have the same one?" Hearing this, my head started spinning as if I'd been hit by a cannonball. I was completely dumbfounded. I hurriedly explained, "Sir, I created this proposal myself. I spent several nights working on it." How could it be the same as Clive's? There must be some misunderstanding. Suddenly, the office door burst open, and a group of colleagues poured in like a pack of hungry wolves. Clive stood at the front, looking as smug as a general who had just won a battle. He said, "Ellen, there's no use denying it. This is clearly my proposal. How could you plagiarize it? I think you just wanted to take a shortcut." The other colleagues chimed in, their voices loud enough to lift the roof. "That's right, Ellen. We never thought you were this kind of person, pulling such stunts when you've just joined the company. We always suspected she wasn't genuine. Turns out she's quite the schemer." My face turned as red as a ripe tomato with anger. I shouted, "You're all talking nonsense. This is my proposal. You must be conspiring to frame me. Clive, why are you doing this?" Clive, however, maintained an innocent expression and said, "Ellen, you can't make false accusations. This proposal is mine, and everyone here can vouch for that. If you don't believe it, we can look for evidence." His expression was so fake it could make a mirror crack with shame. I was at a loss for words, feeling both angry and desperate. Tears welled up in my eyes as I felt like a little bird trapped in an iron cage, surrounded by cold, hard bars with no way to escape. With no other option, I had to seek help from Justin. I ran all the way, feeling as if my feet might take flight, to his office. Without even bothering to knock, I burst in like a cannonball. Justin was sitting at his desk, his brow furrowed, like a volcano about to erupt. He was looking at a pile of documents, his face etched with exhaustion and irritation. The atmosphere was so cold it could have turned the entire office into the Antarctic. I didn't care about all that and rattled off the whole story, finally looking at him pleadingly, saying, "Justin, you have to help me. They've gone too far. I'm really being wrongly accused." After listening to me, Justin's frown deepened, enough to trap a fly. He glanced at his watch and said impatiently, "I'm very busy right now. The company has a lot of important matters to deal with. I simply don't have time to handle your trivial issues. Sort it out yourself, don't come to me for everything. When I married you, it wasn't so you could cause me trouble." His tone was as cold as a Siberian wind, enough to freeze my heart solid. Hearing this, I felt as if a bucket of liquid nitrogen had been poured over my heart, chilling me to the bone. I couldn't believe my ears. I had thought he would take my side, help me solve the problem. I never expected him to be so cold, so indifferent to me. My eyes welled up with tears, but I held them back and said, "Justin, how can you say that? I'm really in trouble. Can't you help me? Don't you know how hard it is for me at the company? They're all bullying me." Justin cut me off, his tone as cold as a glacier that hasn't melted in 1,000 years, saying, "I told you I don't have time. Deal with your own problems. Competition in the company is fierce. If you can't handle even the small issue, what can you do in the future?" I looked at him utterly disappointed, feeling the distance between us was as vast as that between Earth and Mars. I bit my lip and said, "Fine, I understand. I'll sort it out myself." With that, I turned and left, tears falling like pearls from a broken string. Leaving his office, I felt the whole world had turned dark and gloomy, as if covered by a black curtain. I wandered aimlessly through the company corridors, thinking, what exactly is this contract marriage? Am I really just a trouble, a burden in Justin's eyes? Suddenly, I heard laughter coming from a nearby meeting room. Curious, I walked over and peeked through the glass. It was Clive and a few colleagues inside. They were laughing happily, and one of them said, "Haha, we really got Ellen this time. Let's see if she dares to be so arrogant in the future." Clive said smugly, "Exactly, she thought she could walk all over the company just because she married Mr. Sheffield? How naive! This time we'll teach her a lesson." Hearing this, I was furious, feeling like my lungs could turn into a bomb and explode, blowing the whole world away. So they really were deliberately framing me. I wanted to rush in and give them a piece of my mind, to curse them until their ears rang. But I held back. I knew that acting rashly now would only make things worse. I took a deep breath, silently vowing, "You bastards, just you wait. I, Ellen Watson, won't let this go." I'll definitely find evidence to prove my innocence and make you pay for what you've done. You'll regret ever being born. But how to find this evidence? I had no clue. I asked around the company, talked to many people, but everyone avoided me like the plague. No one was willing to help me. I felt like a lonely boat lost in the dark, drifting helplessly in a vast sea, unable to find a way out. Just when I was about to lose all hope, I suddenly remembered something. The day I was organizing my files, I had written down some important ideas and thoughts in a notebook, complete with timestamps. That notebook could be the key evidence to prove my innocence. Like a magical key that could unlock the door to the truth. I was so excited I nearly jumped out of my skin. I rushed back to my desk and frantically searched through my drawers for that notebook. After what felt like ages, I finally found it. I opened it and looked at the pages filled with my scribbled handwriting. My heart raced with excitement as if I could see the first light of dawn. A light so bright it could illuminate the entire universe. Clutching the notebook, I went to see my boss again. When he saw me, his face was still full of doubt. "Ellen, what are you doing here again? Are you still trying to make excuses?" I handed him the notebook and said, "Sir, please look at this. These are my notes from when I was working on the project proposal. It has detailed thoughts and time records that prove I created this proposal. They're deliberately framing me. Please, you must see the truth." My boss took the notebook and examined it carefully. His expression gradually became serious, like a dark cloud about to unleash a downpour. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Ellen, you can go now. I'll investigate this matter thoroughly. If someone really is framing you, I won't let them off easily." I finally felt a weight lift off my shoulders and replied, "Thank you, sir. I trust you'll get to the bottom of this and clear my name." As I left my boss's office, I felt much better. Although the situation wasn't entirely resolved, at least there was a glimmer of hope. I believed that if I persevered, I could expose those who tried to frame me and make them face the consequences of their actions. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. More troubles awaited me at the company, and my relationship with Justin would become even more complicated because of this incident. I couldn't help but think that life with this marriage of convenience was like a roller coaster, throwing me up to the sky one moment and slamming me down to the ground the next. But I, Ellen Watson, am not someone who gives up easily. No matter how many obstacles lie ahead, I'll face them head on. I thought that once I took the notebook proving my innocence to my boss, things would turn around. Those who had framed me would be put in their place, and I'd be hailed as a hero in the company. But reality, like a mischievous child determined to oppose me, decided to give me a harsh reality check just when I had a glimmer of hope, leaving me completely disoriented. A few days later, my boss called me into his office. With a serious expression, he informed me that after investigation, it was confirmed that I had indeed created the project plan. He assured me he would deal with the colleagues who had tried to frame me. Hearing this news, I was over the moon. I could have broken into a jig right there in celebration. I hastily thanked my boss, thinking to myself, "Ha! Let's see how those lot look down on me now." Ellen Watson isn't someone to be trifled with. Although my colleagues were more polite to my face, I could still feel their judgmental glances behind my back. Their looks were like poisoned darts, constantly piercing me, making me feel uncomfortable. But who am I? Ellen Watson, the girl who never gives up. What's a little setback like this? I treated them like a bunch of jealous children. What could they do to me? I gave myself a pep talk, silently vowing to make something of myself and earn their respect. However, the real trouble was yet to come. One day, the company was hosting a massive corporate event. Industry bigwigs and important clients were all in attendance. It was busier than Christmas Day. As Justin's wife, at least on paper, I was required to attend. I spent hours getting ready, putting on my best dress. Once I had it on, I felt like I could walk the runway at London Fashion Week. I told myself I couldn't embarrass Justin. After all, I was his wife now, wasn't I? I had to look the part. The event venue was dazzling, with lights so bright they could blind you. The mix of music and chatter made it feel like a grand party. I was standing in a corner, wondering if I should go and greet Justin. when suddenly, a woman swept towards me like a whirlwind. As I looked closer, I realized this woman was stunningly beautiful. Her figure could make a supermodel green with envy, and she was wearing a red evening gown. Her presence was regal, like the queen had arrived, but this queen didn't look too friendly. Before I could react, she was standing in front of me, looking me up and down with such disdain and challenge in her eyes. It was as if she was examining some bizarre alien life form. "Are you Ellen Watson? Justin's new wife?" Her voice was high and shrill, like an icy needle piercing my heart. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately became wary. This woman clearly meant trouble. But I'm not one to be easily intimidated. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, then lifted my chin and stared back at her defiantly. "Yes, I'm Ellen Watson." "And you are?" I thought to myself, "Let's see what you're up to." She let out a cold laugh, a sound as unpleasant as a cat's yowl. "I'm Elsie Hayward, Justin's ex-girlfriend. I was curious to see what kind of woman Justin would marry. To think it's someone like you, how disappointing." Hearing the words ex-girlfriend, my heart clenched as if someone had grabbed it. So it was her, no wonder she was so arrogant. I felt a spark of anger ignite inside me. How dare she be so haughty and overbearing? I'm not one to be bullied. I shot back without hesitation. "Elsie, is it? I don't know what kind of relationship you had with Justin in the past, but I'm his wife now. Please show some respect." I crossed my arms, looking at her with determination, thinking, "If you want to challenge me, you're not ready for it." Elsie, upon hearing this, didn't back down. Instead, she laughed even louder, the sound grating on my ears like nails on a chalkboard. "Wife? You're nothing but a substitute Justin found, a mere tool. Do you really think he loves you? Don't be naive. I'm the one he truly loves." The people around us, hearing our argument, gathered like sharks smelling blood, crowding around to watch as if it were a free circus performance. I felt my face burning, a mix of anger and anxiety making my cheeks flush red. My hands clenched into fists, and I desperately wanted to rush up and confront her. But I forced myself to remain calm. I'm not the type to lose my head, and making a scene in this situation would only please her more. I said loudly, "You're talking nonsense. Justin and I have genuine feelings for each other, and our marriage is serious." I lifted my head, looking at the people around us with determination, as if declaring that I wasn't afraid of her provocations. Elsie curled her lip in disdain, her expression as if she'd seen something revolting. She said, "Genuine feelings? Who are you trying to fool? You're just after Justin's money and status, aren't you? I've seen plenty of women like you." I was shaking with anger, my hands trembling involuntarily. I wanted to rush up and slap her, to show her what I was made of. But I held back, taking a deep breath to calm myself, then said coldly, "Elsie, I don't want to argue with you here. If you keep making a scene, I won't be so polite." In my mind, I told myself not to let her provoke me, to stay calm and not let her win. But Elsie wouldn't let up, carrying on like an unreasonable fishwife. She said, "What's the matter? Did I hit a nerve? You think you'll last long with Justin? Once he's bored with you, he'll toss you aside like rubbish." Just then, Justin appeared out of nowhere. Seeing us arguing, his brow furrowed like a pretzel, a flash of displeasure in his eyes. He walked up to us, looked at Elsie, and said coldly, "Elsie, haven't you caused enough trouble? This is a company event, not a place for you to make a scene." Seeing Justin, Elsie's face changed as quickly as a chameleon. She suddenly looked pitiful, like a wounded flower, her voice tinged with tears as she said, "Justin, I just wanted to chat with her. I didn't expect her to be so fierce and speak to me so harshly." Hearing this, I nearly exploded with anger. How could this woman be such a good actress? I was so furious I almost jumped up, about to retort when Justin said to me, "Ellen, you should go back first. I'll handle this." My heart instantly felt like it had been thrown into an ice cellar, chilled to the core. I couldn't believe he didn't trust me and was asking me to leave. I looked at Justin, my eyes full of hurt and confusion, wondering what I meant to him. I bit my lip, trying hard not to let the tears fall. I couldn't let Elsie see me cry. Stubbornly, I said, "Fine, I'm leaving." As I turned to go, each step felt like I was walking on cotton, light and airy, but my heart felt heavy as lead. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I held them back, telling myself to be strong and not show weakness at a time like this. After leaving the event venue, I felt increasingly angry and upset. I couldn't understand why Elsie Hayward was targeting me, or why Justin didn't believe me. Was I really just a disposable entity in his eyes? Had I truly done something wrong to make him distrust me so much? Various thoughts swirled in my mind, leaving me feeling distressed and confused. I felt like a small bird lost in a storm, unable to find my bearings or know where to go. When I got home, I sat alone on the sofa, and my tears finally broke free, falling like pearls from a broken string. I felt so helpless and lonely. This house, which should have been a warm haven, now felt utterly foreign and desolate. Suddenly, my phone rang. I picked it up and saw a message from a colleague at work. As I opened it, I froze in shock. The message said that rumors were circulating throughout the company, claiming that I had used improper means to get my job, and that my marriage to Justin was nothing but a transaction. That I had only married him for money. My hands shook with anger. I knew without a doubt that this was Elsie's doing. She must have instructed her subordinates to spread these rumors around the office after the event, intent on thoroughly discrediting me. I was filled with fury and frustration. I couldn't fathom why she would do this. Was it merely out of jealousy? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I couldn't help but curse inwardly, "Elsie Hayward, you despicable person, I won't let you get away with this." I knew I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I had to find a way to fight back. I silently vowed to make her pay for her actions. The next day, when I went to work, my colleagues' looks had changed. Their eyes were full of contempt and disdain. Wherever I went, I could hear them whispering and pointing behind my back. "Look, that's her, the one who got into the company through improper means. I heard she's hooked up with Mr. Sheffield." How shameless. I felt like a pariah, shunned by everyone. Each word was like a sharp knife, piercing my heart and causing me unbearable pain. But I, Ellen Watson, am not someone who's easily defeated. I forced myself to remain calm, pretending not to hear their words, maintaining a composed expression. I kept telling myself, "Stay strong, don't let these rumors defeat you. I must prove my innocence and make them all shut up." I went to find Justin, wanting to explain everything clearly and ask him to help me clear up these rumors. I arrived at his office where he was sitting at his desk, looking tired as he pored over some documents. I walked over, looked him straight in the eye, and said firmly, "Justin, listen to me. Those rumors were deliberately spread by Elsie. I really didn't use any improper means to get into the company, and our marriage isn't what they're saying it is." I hoped he would believe me, that he would see my sincerity. Justin looked up at me, his eyes full of doubt and coldness. He said, "I'm very busy right now and don't have time to listen to your explanations. I need time to investigate whether these rumors are true or not. You should go now, don't disturb me again." My heart was pierced again, as if frozen by his coldness. I couldn't believe that Justin didn't trust me and was being so distant. I looked at him, my eyes full of disappointment and hurt, and said loudly, "Justin, how can you treat me like this? I'm your wife, you should believe me. I've always worked hard to do my job well in this company, facing so many difficulties without backing down. Now you doubt me because of these baseless rumors. You've really disappointed me." My hands were clenched tightly, my body trembling slightly, unable to suppress the hurt and anger in my heart any longer. But Justin impatiently said, "Wife? In this company, you're just an ordinary employee. I can't show you favoritism just because you're my wife. Go back now, we'll talk after I've finished my investigation." I felt a wave of despair in my heart. It felt like the trust between Justin and me was like a mirror that Elsie had mercilessly shattered, the shards cutting me to pieces. I turned and walked out of his office, tears flowing again. But I didn't stop. I knew I couldn't let this defeat me. As I walked, I silently vowed, "Justin, Elsie, just you wait. I, Ellen Watson, will prove my innocence and make you see me in a new light. I straightened my back and strode forward. Although my heart was full of pain and confusion, I was still full of fighting spirit. I believed that I would find a way to solve this problem and get out of this predicament. As I left Justin's office, I felt like I'd been kicked from cloud 9 straight into the depths of hell. The fall left me reeling, feeling as if my insides had been scrambled. But I wasn't about to give up or give in. That stubborn streak in me flared up, and I decided that even if the whole world tried to trample me, I'd claw my way out of the mire and fight for justice. While giving myself a fierce mental pep talk, I tried to focus on work with a facade of calm. But Elsie was like a persistent demon I couldn't shake off, constantly causing trouble around me and robbing me of any peace. A few days later, the company was hit by what felt like a bombshell, throwing everything into chaos. Our important overseas partner had unilaterally terminated the contract. The news sent shockwaves through the company, turning our once orderly office into absolute pandemonium. Anxiety and panic were etched on my colleagues' faces, with worried chatter buzzing everywhere like a swarm of headless flies. When I heard the news, my mind went blank, and I froze on the spot. It felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my heart, making it hard to breathe. My first thought was that this must be the work of that vicious woman, Elsie Hayward. She had been so arrogant and domineering at the last company event, like a raging tigress. This time, she must have been pulling strings behind the scenes, using some underhanded tactics. Justin called an emergency meeting with the senior management to discuss countermeasures. I paced back and forth outside the conference room like a headless chicken. With each step, my anxiety grew. I was desperate to burst in and help Justin, even if just to offer some suggestions from the sidelines. But I knew all too well that I was just an ordinary employee in the company, with no place in such high-level meetings. Barging in would only cause more problems. So I kept walking up and down the corridor, feeling utterly helpless and abandoned, like an orphan cast aside by the world. Looking at the closed doors of the conference room, I made a silent vow. Elsie, you just wait. I'll find the evidence and expose you as the mastermind behind all this. I couldn't just sit around waiting to be bullied. I had to take action, to confront Elsie face to face and get to the bottom of this. After asking around, I finally learned that Elsie would be making an appearance at a business event. Without a second thought, I rushed off to find her. As I arrived at the event venue, the scene was truly bustling with excitement. Everywhere I looked, there were people dressed in their finest attire, their laughter and chatter filling the air. But I couldn't care less about any of that. My eyes scanned the crowd, searching for Elsie. It didn't take long before I spotted her. She was wearing a dazzlingly ostentatious white gown, looking like a peacock at the height of its pride. She was engaged in animated conversation with a group of people, her smug expression making my blood boil. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I told myself to stay cool and not lose my composure in front of her. Mustering all the courage I could, I strode purposefully towards her. The people around us looked at me as if I were some sort of oddity, their faces etched with surprise as they began to whisper among themselves. I stared directly at Elsie, my eyes blazing with fury, and said loudly, Elsie, what other dirty tricks do you have up your sleeve? Was it you who caused Justin's company to lose its overseas contract? Why would you do such a thing? Do you have any moral boundaries left? My voice trembled with anger, each word seeming to be forced through gritted teeth. When Elsie saw me, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. But it was quickly replaced by an even more smug smile. That smile was like a sharp knife, piercing straight into my heart. She drawled, well, if it isn't Ellen Watson. What's the matter? Couldn't keep your cool and had to come confront me? Do you have any evidence that I did anything? You think people will believe your baseless accusations? I was shaking with rage, my hands clenched into fists so tight that my nails dug into my palms, but I couldn't feel the pain. I shouted, if not you, then who? Stop pretending to be innocent. You're just jealous that Justin and I are married. So you're using every vicious method you can think of to sabotage his company. You're utterly despicable, willing to do anything to get what you want. Elsie calmly smoothed out her dress, acting as if nothing was wrong. She said, jealous? You're really full of yourself, aren't you? I've only done what needed to be done. Justin was supposed to be mine, and you're just a silly little girl who got in the way. You think marrying him means you'll have an easy life? Don't be so naive. You'd better wise up and leave Justin quickly, or I have ways to make your life a living hell. I was so angry I saw stars, wanting nothing more than to rush at her and tear that smug face to shreds. I held back my fury and said, enunciating each word, I will never leave Justin. We truly love each other. Someone like you, who relies on schemes and tricks to get what they want, will never succeed. I will find evidence and expose your true nature to everyone, making you pay for what you've done. Elsie let out a cold laugh, the sound like an owl's hoot, sending chills down my spine. She leaned in close and lowered her voice, saying, You? You think you can outsmart me? You're so naive. The power I have behind me is beyond your imagination. If you continue to be so stubborn, I'll make sure both you and Justin are completely ruined. Then you'll learn the true meaning of regret. The people around us heard our argument and gathered like a tide, surrounding us tightly in the middle. They looked at us as if watching a brilliant drama, their eyes full of curiosity and excitement. I felt like a wild animal trapped in a cage, angry but with nowhere to vent. But I didn't back down. I stared straight into Elsie's eyes. My gaze filled with determination and defiance, and shouted, I won't give up. Bring it on. I will fight you with my last breath if I have to. After returning from the event, I felt completely drained, utterly exhausted. But my mind never stopped working. I kept thinking about how to find evidence of Elsie framing Justin's company. Just when I was racking my brains and almost coming up with a clue, an even bigger problem came crashing down on me like a mountain, without any warning. Suddenly, news spread through the company that I had stolen company secrets. This news was like a terrible plague, instantly spreading throughout the office. My colleagues' looks changed, filled with disgust and accusation. As if I were some unforgivable criminal. As soon as I walked into the office, I heard people whispering behind my back. Look, that's her, the traitor who stole company secrets. I can't believe she's that kind of person. She always acted so innocent. How shameless. I wanted to explain, but no one was willing to listen to me. They seemed bewitched, convinced that I was the culprit. I was at a loss for words, feeling both angry and anxious, with tears welling up in my eyes. I felt like I had fallen into a dark abyss, surrounded by cold walls, struggling but unable to escape. I rushed to my desk to see what was going on. When I opened my drawer and saw the confidential company document, I was stunned. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had never put this there, someone must have framed me. The first person I thought of was Elsie. Who else could be so ruthless and use such underhanded tactics? I took the document, my hands shaking uncontrollably, and went to explain to my boss like a madwoman. I burst into his office and desperately said, Sir, I really didn't do this. Someone is framing me, it must be Elsie. You have to believe me. I've always been diligent in my work, how could I possibly do such a thing? My boss's face darkened, his eyes full of disappointment and anger. He said coldly, Ellen, what more is there to explain? The evidence is right in front of us. I can't believe you would do such a thing. The company will not let you off lightly. You've performed well in the past, I never thought you were this kind of person. Tears suddenly streamed down my face. I cried, Sir, you've really misunderstood me. This is Elsie's plot. She just wants to frame me and make it impossible for me to stay in the company. Please give me another chance. Let me investigate. I can prove my innocence. But my boss impatiently waved his hand and said, Elsie? Don't try to push everything onto others. The evidence is conclusive. Just wait for the company's decision. Now get out, I don't want to see you anymore. I walked out of my boss's office in despair, feeling as if the whole world had turned dark and gloomy. What was I to do? How could I prove my innocence? I felt like a drowning ant, desperately struggling in the vast ocean, unable to find a single straw to save my life. Just when I felt utterly hopeless, I suddenly thought of Justin. He was my only hope now. Clinging to this last lifeline, I rushed to Justin's office. I pushed open the door, only to witness a heart-shattering scene. He was with Elsie Hayward. Elsie, upon seeing me, flashed a smug smile that bordered on twisted. That smile was like a sharp sword, piercing straight through my heart. Justin, on the other hand, looked at me with disappointment and anger in his eyes. That gaze felt utterly foreign, as if everything between us had crumbled in an instant. Before I could speak, Justin coldly said, "Ellen, you've disappointed me greatly. How did the company's confidential documents end up in your drawer? What explanation could you possibly have? Do you realize how serious this is? It could potentially devastate the company." I looked at Justin, tears streaming down my face, my heart feeling as if it was being sliced by countless knives simultaneously. Crying, I said, "Justin, you must believe me. This is truly Elsie's plot to frame me. I didn't steal any company secrets, I really didn't. I've always been trying my best to maintain our relationship. To do everything I can for you and the company. How can you not trust me?" Elsie, however, feigned sincerity and said, "Justin, I know it's hard for you to accept this fact, but the evidence is right before our eyes. We can't let emotions cloud our judgment. Perhaps she approached you with ulterior motives from the beginning. Looking back now, everything seems rather suspicious." Justin looked at me, his eyes full of hesitation and struggle. He seemed to be trying hard to control his emotions as he said, "Ellen, I really don't know who to believe right now. This matter is too serious. I need time to think it over. You should leave for now." I looked at Justin in despair, my heart screaming, "Why? Why don't you believe me? Is our relationship so fragile that it can't withstand this?" I walked out of the office, feeling utterly lost, my steps as heavy as if they were filled with lead. I didn't know where to go or what to do, feeling as if my world had completely fallen apart. At that moment, unbeknownst to me, in a corner out of sight, Elsie was flashing a sinister smile, plotting her next, even more vicious scheme. During the Cold War between us, the company felt like a freezer, with an oppressive atmosphere that could freeze anyone solid. Every day, I was like a headless chicken, charging recklessly through my work, trying to numb my battered heart with busyness. To secure new partnerships for the company, I rushed about everywhere, talking until my lips were raw and running until my legs gave out. Countless nights, I was the only one left in the office, the light as ghastly white as a haunted house. The world outside had long since fallen asleep, while I sighed over piles of documents. Finally, I succeeded in winning an incredibly important collaboration opportunity for the company. I was overjoyed, like a child waiting for praise, thinking that now everyone would surely see my efforts and change their opinion of me. Excitedly, I ran to my colleagues, saying enthusiastically, "Listen, everyone. I've secured a major partnership for our company. They're a powerful entity, and this is an excellent opportunity for our development." But they merely raised their eyelids, their eyes full of coldness and doubt. One colleague said sarcastically, "Oh, aren't you clever? Who knows how you managed that partnership?" Another chimed in, "Indeed, probably took some shortcuts." My face turned red with anger as I shouted, "How can you say that? You have no idea how much effort I put into this partnership." But they just shrugged, turned away, and muttered, "Who knows if it's true or not?" My joy instantly vanished, as if doused with a bucket of cold water. I could only pin my hopes on Justin Sheffield, thinking he would surely understand me. However, Justin seemed completely blind to my efforts. He was busy from dawn to dusk, and our communication was pitiful. Every time I mustered the courage to talk to him, he would frown and impatiently say, "I'm very busy now. We'll talk later." That day, I went to find him again, carefully saying, "Justin, I've secured a partnership for the company. It's very beneficial for us. Could you spare some time to hear the details?" Without even looking up, he said while reading some documents, "I see. Just leave it there, I'll look at it when I have time." Feeling dejected, I still persisted, "This partnership is really important. I worked so hard to negotiate it." He interrupted me, his tone somewhat irritated. I said, "I'm busy. Can't you see I'm dealing with important matters? Stop bothering me." I felt like a frostbitten eggplant, leaving with my head hung low. At that moment, I felt like someone rowing alone in the dark, unable to see the shore or know which direction to go. Elsie, seeing Justin and me in a cold war, was practically walking on air. She shadowed Justin all day, acting all sweet and obedient in front of him. One day, I went to Justin's office to fetch some documents. Just as I reached the door, I heard Elsie's sweet voice. "Justin, you're working so hard. I've made you a cup of tea, do try it." Then came Justin's voice, "Thank you, that's very thoughtful of you." My heart ached. I pushed open the door to see Elsie affectionately holding Justin's arm. Both of them chatting and laughing. Elsie noticed me and raised her chin challengingly, saying, "Oh, Ellen, what brings you here?" Fighting back tears, I looked at Justin and said, "I'm here to collect some documents." Justin glanced at me and said coolly, "Take what you need and go. Elsie and I have matters to discuss." At that moment, my heart felt like it was being torn apart. I turned and ran out, tears streaming down my face. I felt like all my efforts had been for nothing, that I probably meant nothing to him. Just as I was about to be overwhelmed by despair, a turning point appeared. One of my colleagues found me, looking very serious as he handed me some files. "Ellen," he said, "I stumbled upon these by chance. They should prove your innocence. That Elsie woman has gone too far." I took the files with trembling hands, both shocked and delighted as I looked at the evidence. "Thank you so much," I said hurriedly, "this means everything to me." My colleague patted my shoulder and said, "I always knew you weren't that kind of person. Quickly, go show these to Justin. Let him know the truth." With the evidence in hand, I rushed back to Justin's office. I pushed open the door to find him sitting at his desk. Seeing me enter, he frowned slightly and said, "What is it now?" I walked up to him, placed the evidence on the table, and said with a trembling voice, "Justin, this is proof that Elsie framed me. Please, take a good look. I've never done anything to betray you. Do you know how much I've sacrificed for you and this company? Why won't you believe me?" Justin picked up the evidence, his expression growing increasingly grim, his eyes filled with shock and regret. After finishing, he slowly raised his head to look at me, his lips moving slightly, his voice a bit hoarse. "Ellen, I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. I shouldn't have let anger and suspicion cloud my judgment. I've caused you so much pain. Can you forgive me?" Looking at him, all the pent-up hurt and anger I had been feeling suddenly burst forth. "Justin, do you have any idea what I've been through? You didn't trust me, and you were all smiles with Elsie. You made me feel like a fool, desperately trying to prove myself to you, only to be met with your coldness and suspicion." Justin stood up, walked over to me, and bowed deeply, his tone sincere and determined. "Ellen, I truly realize my mistake. I didn't handle this situation well. I didn't give you the trust and support you deserved. Please, give me one more chance to make amends. I promise, I will never let you be hurt like this again." I looked at him, tears flowing, but the anger in my heart gradually subsiding. I knew I still loved him, I couldn't just throw away our relationship. Justin gently pulled me into his arms, his embrace still as warm and familiar as ever. He whispered in my ear, "Ellen, trust me. We'll face Elsie together. I'll make sure she pays for what she's done. From now on, I'll always be by your side. I won't let you suffer even the slightest bit of hurt again." I nodded, leaning into his embrace, and choked out, "I hope you mean it this time. I really can't go through this pain again." He held me tightly and said, "I swear, I'll keep my word." At that moment, we embraced and cried together, all the pain and misunderstanding seeming to dissipate in an instant. But we both knew that Elsie wouldn't give up easily, and the road ahead was still long with many challenges. However, as long as we cleared up our misunderstandings and trusted each other, nothing could defeat us. After reconciling with Justin, the joy of our reunion warmed my entire being like the spring sunshine. However, the thought of Elsie's persistent, potentially destructive presence cast a shadow over this happiness, filling my heart with worry. We both knew that the battle with Elsie had only just entered its most intense phase, and a fiercer struggle awaited us. During those days, at the office, Justin and I were like two tireless perpetual motion machines, throwing ourselves wholeheartedly into work. We paid attention to every detail and strived for perfection in every task, fearing that a single oversight might give Elsie an opportunity to exploit. At night, when the entire city was deep in slumber, Justin was still busy gathering evidence of Elsie's crimes. He utilized his network in the business circle, inquiring and investigating everywhere, not letting any lead slip through. I sat under the desk lamp, poring over mountains of documents like a detective, my eyes fixed on every word and every figure, with only one thought in mind. We must find enough evidence to expose Elsie and seek justice for everything we've endured. As our investigation deepened, we gradually uncovered Elsie's appalling misdeeds. Not only had she bribed key employees in Justin's company to steal confidential documents and sabotage several important collaborative projects, but she had also used the Hayward family's vast influence to suppress Justin's business in the commercial sector. Her methods were far more despicable and her heart more vicious than we had imagined. I clenched my fists in anger, my nails digging deep into my palms, inwardly roaring, "Elsie, you wicked woman, I will never let you get away with this." Finally, we gathered enough evidence to expose Elsie's crimes to the public. Elsie seemed to sense that things were going awry and began to struggle frantically like a cornered beast. Realizing that our investigation was closing in, Elsie first sent people with an exquisite box full of large checks and various priceless gifts, attempting to bribe us with money and material goods. When I saw these things, I felt nothing but disgust, a strong sense of revulsion rising within me. Does she think she can buy us off with these? What kind of people does she take us for? Justin looked at these bribes, his eyes revealing utter contempt and anger. He coldly told the messenger, "Take all of these back exactly as they came. Tell Elsie to stop having such foolish dreams. We know everything she's done, and she won't escape." The messenger, still not giving up, tried to persuade us. "Mr. Sheffield, Miss Watson, we're all intelligent people. Why make things so difficult?" Miss Hayward was just confused for a moment. "If you two could be lenient, we could all get along in the future." I angrily interrupted him, "Stop wasting our time. Elsie has done so many terrible things and hurt so many people. She must face the consequences of her actions. We won't be bought off by these things. You'd better leave now." Seeing that her bribery attempt had failed, Elsie flew into a rage like a gambler who had lost everything. She mobilized all her family's resources to launch a fierce attack on Justin's company. She united all the enterprises under her family's control to completely boycott Justin's company, refusing any form of cooperation with us. At the same time, she spread numerous baseless rumors in the business circle, maliciously slandering Justin's company, saying that our company's capital chain had broken and we were on the verge of bankruptcy. She even claimed that Justin had questionable character and engaged in unfair competition. These rumors spread like a virus, causing panic in the company, with clients leaving in droves and orders sharply declining. Our capital chain began to show severe strain. Looking at the anxious and worried employees, I felt both heartbroken and anxious, silently vowing to resolve this issue as soon as possible and provide everyone with a stable work environment. I found Justin and said firmly, "We can't let her continue to be so arrogant. We must take action and stabilize the situation quickly. The employees are very worried now, we need to reassure them." Justin held my hand tightly, his eyes full of determination and confidence. "Don't worry, I already have a plan to deal with this. We will definitely overcome this difficulty and make Elsie pay dearly for what she's done. Try to reassure the employees in the company, let them work with peace of mind. Believe that we will win." During a crucial business negotiation, Elsie secretly instructed our potential partner to deliberately make things difficult for us. The partner started by proposing a series of extremely harsh conditions, their attitude as unyielding as a cold wall, leaving no room for discussion. Justin suppressed his anger and calmly said to the partner's representative, "The conditions you've proposed are not only unreasonable but also significantly detrimental to both parties' interests. We've always maintained an attitude of sincere cooperation and hope everyone can view this issue rationally, seeking a mutually beneficial solution together." The partner's representative sneered and said disdainfully, "Spare me the lecture. Today, we'll do things our way, or this cooperation ends here. You know your company's current situation all too well, so don't try to bargain with me. Justin remained calm, methodically analyzing the current market situation and detailing the numerous benefits and potential enormous profits of cooperating with us. Every word he spoke was convincing, and every point hit the mark. After an intense exchange, the partner's representative's attitude finally softened, though still hesitant. Seizing the moment, Justin proposed some more reasonable suggestions and plans. In the end, the partner was impressed by Justin's professionalism and sincerity, not only agreeing to continue the cooperation but also expressing great anger at Elsie's despicable behavior. Meanwhile, within the company, I tirelessly organized one staff meeting after another. Standing on the platform, looking at the anxious faces of the employees, I said loudly, "Don't be discouraged, don't be frightened by the difficulties before us. Elsie's schemes are only temporary. Our company has strong capabilities and deep roots, we will certainly overcome this challenge. We must unite, believe in the company, believe in ourselves. As long as we work together, Elsie's plots will never succeed." The employees nodded, their eyes rekindling with fighting spirit. "Ms. Watson, we're with you. Yes, let's work hard together and defeat Elsie." Seeing everyone's morale boosted, I felt a sense of relief. As the press conference date approached, Elsie became increasingly frantic and unscrupulous. She bribed the staff at the conference venue to deliberately sabotage key equipment before the event, and arranged for a group of people to cause disruption, attempting to create chaos at the crucial moment and derail our plans. Upon learning this news, I was extremely anxious and immediately found Justin, saying urgently, "Justin, Elsie has gone too far. She's actually bribed the venue staff to sabotage the equipment and arranged people to cause trouble. This press conference is crucial for exposing her crimes, we absolutely can't let her succeed. What should we do?" Justin frowned, a hint of worry flashing in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. "Don't panic, I've already thought of a solution. I've arranged for reliable people to inspect and repair the equipment, ensuring the press conference can proceed normally. As for those troublemakers, I've also notified the police. They'll maintain order at the conference venue, guaranteeing that Elsie's schemes won't succeed. You can rest assured, we will definitely succeed." Finally, the day of the press conference arrived. The venue was packed with important figures from the business world, reporters from major media outlets, and people from various sectors who were interested in the matter. The atmosphere was as tense as the calm before a storm, making it difficult to breathe. Justin and I stood on the stage. Ellen took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart, and gave herself a pep talk. "We must succeed in exposing Elsie and make her face the consequences. This is our chance, we absolutely cannot fail." Justin's expression was serious and solemn as he scanned the audience with a determined gaze. He spoke loudly, "Today, we have called this press conference to expose the despicable actions of an individual. That person is Elsie Hayward. To satisfy her own desires, she has resorted to unscrupulous means without any moral boundaries. She bribed employees of our company to steal confidential documents, sabotaged our collaborative projects, and used her family's influence to spread rumors in the business circle, maliciously damaging our company's reputation. Her actions have severely compromised business ethics and market order, causing enormous losses to our company and employees." The crowd below immediately erupted into a buzz of discussion. I stepped forward and began to present the irrefutable evidence they had collected. I held up a document and said loudly, "Look at this, everyone. These are the bank transfer records of Elsie bribing our company's employees. Every transaction is clearly recorded, the time, amount, and recipient, nothing is missing." Next, I showed copies of the confidential documents. "These are the company's confidential documents she stole. Not only do they have her fingerprints, but also her signature." Finally, I played the audio recordings and videos. These recordings and videos document the entire process of her instructing her subordinates to sabotage our cooperation. Her voice and instructions are clearly identifiable. Just then, the doors of the venue were suddenly burst open with a loud bang. Elsie Hayward rushed in with a group of menacing individuals. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes wild with desperation, and her makeup distorted by anger. She shouted, "This is slander. All this evidence is fake, fabricated by you to frame me. You're all liars." I looked at her angrily, responding fearlessly in a loud voice. "Elsie, stop your futile struggles. This evidence is authentic and reliable. It's solid proof of your wrongdoings. You've done so many bad things, and now you're trying to deny it? It's too late." Justin also shouted, "Security, get these people out of here. Don't let them disrupt the order of the press conference." Elsie glared at me, gritting her teeth as she said, "Ellen, it's all because of you, you wretched woman. If it weren't for you, how could I have ended up like this? I won't let you off the hook, even if I die. I'll drag you down with me." I didn't back down, looking straight into her eyes and saying firmly, "Elsie, this is your death throes. You've done too many bad things. This is the retribution you deserve. Do you think you can still escape? Don't dream on." At this point, the people Elsie had brought began to cause chaos in the venue. They pushed and shoved those around them, trying to snatch the evidence from our hands. The scene immediately descended into turmoil, with people's shouts and arguments intermingling. In the midst of this chaos, the police arrived on the scene just in time. The officers quickly moved in, surrounding Elsie and her subordinates. Elsie was still struggling desperately, shouting and cursing. "You can't arrest me. I've been framed. This is their conspiracy. You've all been fooled by them." But it was all in vain. No one believed her excuses anymore. The people below began to denounce her, while media reporters kept taking photos and recording, capturing this dramatic moment forever. In the end, Elsie's misdeeds were fully exposed, and her reputation in the business circle crumbled instantly, making her an object of universal contempt. To save the family's name, the Hayward family had no choice but to severely punish Elsie. They unhesitatingly stripped her of all her positions in the family business and completely expelled her from the Hayward family. Watching Elsie being taken away by the police, looking so dejected, I felt a surge of satisfaction. The anger that had been pent up in her heart for so long was finally released. "This is the fate you deserve, Elsie. You've finally paid the price for your actions." We successfully counterattacked Elsie, not only ensuring she received her due punishment but also taking this opportunity to enhance our company's reputation. After this incident, the company's employees became more united and filled with confidence about the company's future. The relationship between Justin and I was also further strengthened in this fierce battle, becoming even more unbreakable. Although we knew that the road ahead was still long, with various challenges and difficulties waiting for us, we firmly believed that as long as we stood hand in hand, trusting each other, nothing could stop us from moving forward. We would bravely face each day of the future together, creating a better future that belongs to us. After the intense confrontation with Elsie, Justin and I finally enjoyed a brief period of tranquility. The company gradually regained its vitality following the turmoil, with business thriving and everything seemingly moving in a positive direction. However, fate always seems to enjoy throwing you a curveball just when you think you've found stability. That day, I went to work as usual, ready to immerse myself in my tasks when my phone suddenly rang. Seeing the hospital's number on the caller ID, my heart sank and an ominous feeling washed over me. With trembling hands, I answered the call and the doctor's serious voice came through. "Is this Miss Ellen Watson? Mr. Justin Sheffield has been rushed to hospital with a sudden severe illness. He's currently in emergency care. Please come as soon as possible." Upon hearing this news, I felt as if the entire world had collapsed in an instant. The documents in my hand fell to the floor with a thud, but I didn't bother to pick them up. I dashed towards the hospital like a madwoman. On the way, my mind went blank, with only one thought: "Justin, you must be all right." When I arrived at the hospital, breathless and panting, Justin was still in the emergency room. I paced anxiously outside the door, each second feeling like an eternity. All the surrounding sounds seemed to fade away. I could only hear my own rapid heartbeat and heavy breathing. I don't know how long it took, but finally, the emergency room doors slowly opened. The doctor walked out, and I immediately rushed forward, nervously asking, "Doctor, how is he?" The doctor removed his mask, his expression tired but his tone relatively steady. "The patient is out of immediate danger, but he needs to stay in hospital for observation and will require a series of treatments. Hearing that Justin was out of life-threatening danger, I felt some of the tension in my heart ease. I walked into the ward and, seeing Justin lying weak on the hospital bed, tears began to stream down my face. His face was as pale as paper, his lips devoid of color, and his once bright eyes now dull and lifeless. I gently held his hand and choked out, "Justin, how could you be so foolish? Why did you suddenly fall ill like this? Don't you know how worried I was?" Justin slightly opened his eyes, looked at me, and managed a faint smile, his voice weak as he said, "Ellen, don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm sorry for frightening you." Just as I was tenderly caring for Justin, my long-absent father burst into my life like a nightmare. He had somehow learned about Justin's hospitalization and actually came to the hospital to cause a scene. I was in the ward peeling an apple for Justin when I suddenly heard a commotion outside. I put down the apple and hurried out to see what was happening. There stood my father at the door of the ward, shouting loudly, "I'm Ellen's father, I want to see her. Why won't you let me in?" Nurses and patients around were all staring, and I felt both angry and anxious. I quickly went over to grab my father's arm, saying in a low voice, "Dad, why are you here? This is a hospital, don't make a scene." My father shook off my hand and said loudly, "Why can't I come? My daughter is here, can't I visit her? Besides, Justin Sheffield is so wealthy, now that he's ill and in hospital, he should definitely give me some money." I felt both embarrassed and annoyed, and said in a hushed tone, "Dad, how can you be like this? Justin is very ill right now. If you don't care about him, that's one thing, but to come here asking for money? Aren't you ashamed?" But my father was unrepentant, saying righteously, "Ashamed? What do I have to be ashamed of? He's my son-in-law, isn't it right for him to give me some money? You're living such a good life now, while your father is still suffering. How can you bear it?" At that moment, Justin's family members also heard the commotion and rushed over. When they saw his father's behavior, their faces showed expressions of disgust. Justin's mother frowned and said coldly, "Is this your father? How can he be so inconsiderate, causing such a scene in the hospital? It's utterly disgraceful." I blushed with embarrassment and quickly apologized. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sheffield. I had no idea he would act like this. I'll get him to leave right away." I tried to pull my father away, intending to lead him out of the hospital. But he forcefully shook off my hand and continued shouting, "Leave? I'm not going anywhere. I won't leave until you give me money. Let me tell you, I know all about Ellen's shameful childhood secrets. If you don't pay up, I'll spill everything and make you all lose face." Hearing my father's words, my heart sank. Those painful memories from the past surged up like demons, tormenting me. I looked at my father, my eyes filled with despair and pleading, "Dad, why are you doing this to me? What have I done wrong for you to torture me like this?" But my father remained unmoved, continuing his tirade. Justin heard the argument from his hospital room and struggled to get up. I quickly ran in to stop him. "Don't move, just lie down. I'll handle this." Justin looked at me, his eyes full of concern and sympathy. "Ellen, don't push yourself too hard. No matter what happens, I'm here for you." I nodded, fighting back tears. I turned and walked out of the room to face my father again, saying firmly, "Dad, I don't have money to give you, and don't think you can blackmail me with those stories. If you keep causing trouble here, I'll call the police." My father's eyes widened, seemingly surprised by my resolute stance. He tried to continue his rant, but seeing the determination in my eyes, he finally backed down. Muttering under his breath, he turned and slunk away. Watching my father's retreating figure, I felt utterly exhausted and helpless. I knew that although he had left this time, there was no telling what more outrageous things he might do in the future. And Justin's family had clearly developed a strong aversion to my father's behavior, which undoubtedly cast another shadow over my relationship with Justin. Back in the hospital room, Justin looked at me and gently pulled me into his arms, saying, "Ellen, don't be too upset. Your father's actions have nothing to do with you. I love you, and that won't change because of this. We'll face it together, We'll find a way." I leaned into his embrace, tears flowing once again. I silently prayed that all these difficulties would pass quickly, that Justin and I could move forward smoothly without any more interference. But I also knew that the road ahead was long, and who knew how many more trials awaited us. After the tumultuous incident at the hospital involving my father, Justin and I clung to each other like two small birds in a storm, exhausted yet finding warmth in each other's embrace. Those days were unbearably difficult, but thankfully, Justin's condition gradually stabilized and began to improve slowly but surely. During his recovery, the hospital room became our emotional sanctuary. I stayed by his bedside every day, carefully tending to his needs. From administering medication to accompanying him during rehabilitation exercises, every action was filled with my deep concern and empathy for him. Despite his physical weakness, Justin always looked at me with gentle eyes full of comfort and encouragement. As if to say, "Don't worry, we'll get through this together." As Justin's health improved, he rekindled his passion for work, throwing himself wholeheartedly into company affairs. He shone like a brilliant star in the business world once again. With his exceptional abilities and decisive leadership, the company not only quickly regained its former vitality but also achieved remarkable breakthroughs in new areas. Watching him exude confidence at work filled me with pride and contentment. Meanwhile, I continued to strive diligently in my role at the company. The once questioning glances had long since disappeared, replaced by looks of approval and respect from my colleagues. I had proven myself through my own merit, no longer the Ellen who was the subject of whispers and pointed fingers. Shortly after Justin's full recovery, he successfully inherited the family estate and officially took control of the entire enterprise. On that day, he stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor of the company building, bathed in sunlight that accentuated his tall, straight posture. As he gazed out at the bustling city, his eyes reflected a calm confidence, a vision of the future and a determination to master it all. I quietly walked to his side, and he gently took my hand. At that moment, I felt the surge of excitement and joy within him, as well as the deep emotional bond between us. One evening, as the setting sun painted the sky a warm orange red, enveloping the world in a romantic glow, Justin returned home early from work. His face wore a mysterious smile, his eyes twinkling with excitement. He approached me, gently taking my hand, and said softly, "Ellen, come out with me tonight. I have a surprise for you." Filled with curiosity, yet unable to guess what he had planned, I carefully dressed up at his urging, choosing my favorite white dress. When I emerged from the room, a flash of admiration crossed Justin's eyes. He let out a low whistle and said with a smile, "You look beautiful tonight, my princess." The car slowly approached a beautiful seaside estate. Along the way, my heart was pounding like a little rabbit. When the estate came into view, I was stunned by the breathtaking sight before me. The estate was brilliantly lit, with colorful lights illuminating the entire garden. Flowers were in full bloom, their fragrance wafting through the air, making it feel as though we had stepped into a magical fairy tale world. Justin held my hand as we slowly walked into the estate. Along the way, I saw many familiar faces. Our friends and family were standing on both sides of the path, their faces beaming with congratulatory smiles. I looked at Justin in surprise, my eyes filled with emotion and confusion. He simply smiled, saying nothing, and led me step by step towards the center of the estate. As we reached the center, music suddenly began to play. It was our favorite song. Justin let go of my hand, got down on one knee, holding a large bouquet of vibrant red roses in one hand and a sparkling diamond ring in the other. He gazed at me lovingly, his eyes full of affection and tenderness, as if the entire world had faded away and only the two of us remained. "Ellen, from the moment we met, my world changed because of you. You're like a beam of light that illuminated my once dark world. You've been by my side through countless storms, experiencing so many difficulties and challenges, never wavering in your support. During those tough times, your strength, your courage, your gentleness, they all touched me deeply. You are the most important person in my life, the one I want to spend the rest of my days with. I want to wake up every morning and see you as the first person I lay eyes on. I want to fall asleep every night with you by my side. Will you marry me, allow me to love and cherish you for the rest of our lives?" To walk through every season together until the end of time? Watching this romantic scene unfold before me, listening to Justin's heartfelt proposal, I couldn't hold back my tears. All those memories, the laughter and tears we had shared, flashed before my eyes like a film. I was too overwhelmed to speak. I just nodded frantically, my voice trembling as I said, "Yes. Yes, I do." Justin stood up, handed me the roses, and then gently slipped the diamond ring onto my finger. At that moment, time seemed to stand still, and the whole world rejoiced for us. Friends and family burst into applause and cheers, their congratulations echoing all around. I hugged Justin tightly, feeling his heartbeat, and in that moment, it felt as though I had the whole world in my arms. However, the path to happiness never seems to be smooth sailing. During the wedding preparations, my father appeared once again. His arrival shattered the joyous atmosphere. Like a boulder thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples to spread in all directions. He found me and said with a greedy look on his face, "I heard you're getting married to Justin Sheffield? How could you not inform me, your father, about such a big event? The wedding must be grand. You should give me some money so I can show off a bit." I looked at my father, feeling helpless and disappointed. Any expectations I once had for him had long since vanished, leaving only endless fatigue and heartache. "Dad, why are you still like this? The money for the wedding is what we've painstakingly saved. Every penny represents our hard work. You can't just come here and ask for money. Besides, your previous actions have already made Justin's family disapprove of us. Can't you just stay out of trouble? You're only making things more difficult for me." But my father was unrepentant, loudly declaring, "I'm your father. I raised you, so what's wrong with asking for some money? Now that you're marrying into a wealthy family, have you forgotten about your old man? If you don't give me money, I'll cause a scene at the wedding. I'll make your ceremony the laughingstock of everyone." I trembled with anger, my fury and frustration about to erupt like a volcano. I knew my father was capable of anything. His selfishness and greed made me feel utterly hopeless. I didn't want him to ruin my wedding or destroy the hard-earned happiness Justin and I had found. In desperation, I shakily took out my phone and dialed the police. The police arrived quickly. At first, my father tried to argue, but under the authority of the officers, he was eventually taken away. Watching his retreating figure, I felt a mix of emotions. Disappointment in him, regret for the past, and worry for the future. Though it saddened me, I knew I couldn't let him continue to disrupt my life endlessly. I had to take responsibility for my own happiness and walk towards the future that Justin and I deserved. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The sun shone brightly, the sky was as blue as sapphire, and white clouds floated like cotton candy. Dressed in my white wedding gown and holding a bouquet, I slowly walked towards Justin without my father to accompany me. Though there was a tinge of regret in my heart. I knew that the man standing before me would give me a warm home and be by my side for life. Under the witness of the vicar, Justin and I made our sacred vows. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Our voices were firm and strong, as if declaring our commitment to each other to the whole world. We exchanged rings and shared a passionate kiss. At that moment, time seemed to stand still, and the entire world celebrated our love. The applause and blessings from our family and friends echoed throughout the venue, the sound of happiness, the melody of love.